Welcome to the Equipcast for the Archdiocese of Omaha. Designed to help leaders to transform their cultures, to embody the pastoral vision, to be one church, encountering Jesus, equipping disciples, and living mercy.
Welcome, everybody, to the Equipcast. My name is Jim Jansen, and I am your host, and we're going to have a fun conversation today. We're going to talk about vocations today. This episode, because some of you are like, vocations already set. This episode is perfect if you are a mom or a dad or a priest or a nun or a youth minister or a DRE, or you have any affection whatsoever for young people. We're going to talk about how do you accompany a young person through the process of hearing and discerning and responding to God's call. And no one better to join me than our guest today, Father Andrew Roza. How you doing, Father?
Doing great. Thanks. It's good to be here.
Good. Okay, so we always start the show by letting people actually talk about their own story. So tell us a little bit about your own faith journey when you first encountered Jesus.
Yeah, I grew up in Omaha in St. Margaret Mary Parish, and I was really blessed with a Catholic family that lived their faith very well, practiced. I can remember learning about prayer and watching my mom pray, and they really gave a beautiful witness to us. I had some older brothers who were involved in practicing their faith. And so for me, it was just part of the context. It was just part of life. And if I remember one moment being perhaps more pivotal than others, it would probably be, I can recall my freshman retreat at Creighton Prep. And having a really good experience of prayer on my freshman retreat, and then also seeing what that experience of prayer had done in so many of my brothers, my classmates, and the impact that it had made on them as well. So my own experience of intimacy with Jesus that was increased and blossomed, I think, in a new way on that weekend, as well as seeing what that meant to other people and how necessary and good it really was, both for their eternal salvation, but also just for them now, even in this life. And I think that from there, it has been kind of mostly a gradual increase. And I've been really blessed to not have too dramatic a personal story when it comes to faith. In that sense, what a great gift and blessing. I just have always been able to talk to Jesus, talk to the Lord about things as they've come up in life.
That's fantastic. We've had both guests who would say I've always just kind of had a Mary of Nazareth journey where I've just never remember a time where I wasn't close to the Lord. And we had a few people who had a little bit more of a Mary Magdalene style, where there was, there were wayward years. Speaking of the wayward years, we were I don't think this is a wayward thing, but we were talking about curling early on, and I could not, for the life of me, I'm like, Father, what's that thing you used to do, that really quirky sport? And I was like, it's not broom ball, it's not shuffleboard, it's like some combination. I can't say anything more about curling other than it's a thing, and I know Father Roza used to do it. I only discovered this after about 5 minutes into a talk about curling, and it's a good 5 minutes in. It's like, oh my gosh, he's serious. I thought because it was time of the Olympics, I thought he was joking. Father, just super quick crash course, curling and you. How did that happen?
Oh, yeah. My oldest brother had a friend in grade school whose family was from Wisconsin, and they introduced him to curling as a little boy, 7, 8 years old. And our family just got drawn into it. And before we knew it, we were playing in national level competitions that eventually became international competitions.
And what is curling? Just for the people who are like, this has nothing to do with hair.
Winter Olympic sport with the rocks and the brooms and the yelling. That's the sport we're talking about.
There's a Simpsons episode. Have you seen that one where there's a margin?
I think so.
Homer curling.
Yeah, it's a beautiful. If you get the chance to play, it's really a fun game, and we had all kinds of amazing experiences. It was part of my own discernment, of course. We were heavily involved in that sport as Olympic hopefuls. Never made the Olympics ourselves, but got to meet lots of cool people and go lots of cool places. An amazing experience for us, and then obviously had to let it go in order to do greater things for the Lord. But I'm eternally grateful and still have friends from those experiences and from that world, really. It's been a kind of amazing thing.
That's fantastic. We have never, you are the first and probably only person we've heard and I had to say goodbye to my curling dreams in order to pursue my vocation.
Yes.
When vocations directors get together, is that a common story?
No, I mean, there often, almost always are things that have to be let go of
Yeah.
in order to embrace the vocation. And
Some more
that's a good
quirky
thing.
than
And
others.
Some are more memorable and quirky than others. Indeed.
Okay, so thank you for indulging that. Let's jump into the conversation here. We want to talk about vocations. We really can't jump into that, though, without just acknowledging there's a context here. The words vocations crisis have been kind of floating around, churchy Catholic world for decades. It's been very front and center here for the Archdiocese of Omaha. This is the first year in quite some time that we will not have any priestly ordinations. Can you give us a little bit of the background on the vocations crisis?
Yeah, what we found is that there are less and less individuals who are entering into vocations of all kinds, if we're going to be honest about that. And
let's be honest.
Yeah, yeah. So whether that's the Catholic priesthood or whether that's
Mhm.
ministry, on a wider level within, say, Protestant circles, whether that's even just being willing to enter into the sacrament of marriage, that more and more that gets either delayed or not entered into in many first world countries. And what we found within our Catholic setting has basically been that as practice of the faith has decreased, practice of discernment towards seminary has also decreased. Ordinations have in general decreased along with that. And if you look at like the numbers of priests, or if you look at, say, the numbers of seminarians, for example, that we've had versus, say, the number of mass-going Catholics, they usually trend pretty closely.
Yeah.
And so in that sense, it's that there are less. And we see that in various ways. If you look at, for example, the CARA statistics nationwide, they'll say that, gosh, in 1970, there were something like 1.8 priests per parish. And there were only a couple hundred parishes that did not have a pastor at all. And if you look at what the numbers were like, in 2020, that you have one priest per parish nationwide today, but you have something like 3,000 parishes nationwide that do not have a priest. And I think that's often where we begin to feel that difference, is that we begin to notice like, oh, there aren't pastors at these parishes, or, oh, that is a change from what I recall when I was growing up.
Right.
And it is easy to then become fearful and a bit panicked, I think. That's often the response that we see. Like, oh my gosh, it's a
quick, let's go to a foreign country and grab some priests.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's just to say that it's true. We do need to make sure we're inviting people, and we do need to make sure that we're being purposeful. But I don't know that people generally discern vocations within crises. Hopefully, if someone comes to me and says, we want to get married because we're in a life crisis, I will usually tell them that they should respectfully wait and reconsider and move forward in what they're doing in a confident, peaceful, sort of more long-lasting kind of discernment or decision. And I think the same, we talk about like, wow, gosh, what are we working to do? Well, it's like practice of the faith has decreased, and with that vocations have decreased. And we want to be able to help young men to hear God's voice. We want to be able to help our parishes become more vibrant places where more vocations are going to be nurtured and brought forth, that more of those people whom God has invited into his priesthood or into religious life are able to really hear that voice and embrace that challenge with courage.
Yeah. You just did some major myth busting there. To make it explicit, you're saying it's not as though there's been this dramatic drop in, at least proportionally, the number of men serving as priests. In fact, it seems like the number of vocations, those serving as priests, has remained consistent. What's dropped is mass attending Catholics, or the practice of the faith in general.
Yeah, they've dropped in tandem, right? They've dropped together. So
it'd be weird if they didn't.
Right, would.
They're kind of connected.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, so maybe let's start with a little bit of a bright spot, because you are one of the most joyful, positive, hopeful people. A joy to be around. You don't give off, like we're desperate. Do you want to be I've never seen you recruiting, vocations down at the blood bank or whatever. Like you're the lie maybe that is, I think, implicit and never spoken is that somehow the Lord is less at work, that he is either calling less or that he's failing to give the grace to respond. You get to see young people respond. Maybe let's start with some stories of where you see the Lord at work, and then we can kind of deconstruct for our listeners what's happening there so they can begin to play their role in a part of it. So to start, where do you see God at work?
So our young men, the young people that I work with are amazing. They're really amazing. And this past year with COVID has meant less opportunity to be with those groups of young people. But one thing I often will tell people in a more normal setting, like we have now, thanks be to God, is that like my job's one of the most hopeful because I'm always around young people who are encountering the Lord and who are responding to His love. And so to take one example of that's been really beautiful, just in these last few months, has been life at JP2 Newman in Omaha itself. And we've had a group of young men who have had encounters with the Lord at various stages or various parts of whether it was in high school or whether it was after arriving at college. They've had a real deep encounter with the Lord, and they've kind of bound themselves together and been willing to make some real sacrifices. And what that's brought about has been really beautiful. So a number of them formed Exodus 90 groups, which builds a habit of regular prayer and community, and maybe gets rid of some things that can create artificial noise. They were also so they were getting together on Sunday mornings of all times, Sunday mornings at 9 a.m. For college men, that's like,
oh my gosh,
that's a miracle. It's a minor miracle. We get 20 to 30 guys every Sunday morning. And they would watch one of the Knights of Columbus videos, Into the Breach, of that series. They'd have student witnesses given on that theme, and then they'd do small group sharing before confessions and mass. And so they'd eat pancakes, and they're doing it. And by the end of it, some of those guys were saying, "Oh my gosh, like we've done great work with some of these guys, but we've got a bunch of guys who like they need to grow in their prayer life." And so they said, "Well, we've got 3 weeks left in the year, so Father, like let's do a series on prayer. Let's do the same thing, but keep it going and talk more about that." Then we had a retreat with them following up on that in May, where we had 15 to 20 guys, something like that, who got together for a day. We just talked about prayer, did holy hours, and it was beautiful, really beautiful. And so the reality of like, okay, like they have encountered the Lord in various ways. They're in a beautiful, supportive kind of community. And now you have all these kind of questions asked. So all of a sudden, I have guys who are saying, "Father, I'd love to have breakfast with you maybe sometime. And I want to talk about how to discern God's will or understand God's will." Or, "Father, I know you're visiting a seminary, and I'd actually really like to be able to see that and do that because I'm really open to that.
That's fantastic.
I want to know more about that." And so, out of this group of guys who are just following the Lord, loving the Lord, making sacrifices, doing it together, supporting each other, building each other up, you have this whole kind of pocket of beautiful openness and discernment that has taken root.
Yeah.
And so like that's where you see the Lord working, or you see that in, say, in a parish like Norfolk Sacred Heart, where they have St. Mary's Sacred Heart, where they have, discernment groups and young adult groups that are meeting on a regular basis that are very much open to, hey, what's happening in terms of what God's called me to or towards the priesthood. They've had encounters. They work in a lot of different ways. And now they're being really supported and built up in the wake of that encounter with the Lord. Now, we see all kinds of things. Like these are the people who end up as seminarians. And I can't really speak too much to my own seminarian specific stories because I have to respect their confidentiality in various ways. But they have a lot of stories. They're great stories. Hopefully you'll be able to hear them when they're your pastor, or when they're your associate.
Well, as I listen to you share this, what strikes me most profoundly is none of this is contrived. None of it is rocket science. It's like, so there were a group of young people and they were living like Christians. And then in that context of prayer and community and sacrifice, the natural questions about, I wonder what the Lord might have in mind for me, comes up naturally. And they're in a place where they can entertain that and they have someone they can talk to. If you would, maybe break down a little bit more for us, what's going on in the heart and mind of a young person as they're beginning to respond, consider vocation?
It is both exciting and it can be terrifying, I think. I think it's both. I think that often there's this, this experience of God that is just saying, this is so much bigger and better and more than anything else I have. This is so much better. My friendships that are in the Lord are so much different and so much better. And my life, and when I pray and when I experience these things when people pray with me, oh my goodness, it blows me up. And then in the midst of that is to say like, okay, like the Lord could offer me, like I could be a priest like this, like I could offer these sacraments that are doing these amazing things in my life, and I could do that, and that would be. So on the one hand, there's often a lot of excitement And I think I put that in the category of the what could God offer box. Like God could offer me amazing, amazing things. And one thing that is really distinctive about seminarians today versus maybe prior generations is that they pretty much universally have had really strong conversion experiences. Their love for the Lord is very, very like it's personal and experiential and genuine. Whereas in prior generations, it was more common that you had, well, this is, and one of us is going to become a priest.
Grandma said it was me.
Or more often than it was a cultural experience sometimes in the past. Like there's a lot of people and it's a great thing to be a priest. And I think it'd be a nice thing in it without necessarily having had this profound conversion experience before entering a seminary or something like that. Whereas today, almost to a man, they know they can talk about those experiences, which is really beautiful to hear them kind of go through that and talk into that. But there's the what could God offer? Wow. And then in the aftermath of what could God offer, there's often what could God take away? And that's where the role of the leader, the mentor, the friend becomes so important because they're immediately going to begin asking questions like, one, do I have what it takes? Am I like worthy to take this on? Could I see myself doing what Father does? Or does that seem too hard or something like that? So there's do I have what it takes? There's also sometimes the sense like, what will people think? Like, what will my family think? What will my friends think? What will the community think? And it's not uncommon for me to have a man discerning who says, I'm not really talking about this with many people, just so you know. Or my family has given me some resistance, so just so you know, I'm meeting with you, but they don't know that. And it's maybe good for you to know that.
Could you not post it on
That's
social?
Exactly right. Can I talk with a lot of people about this because I'm working that out with them.
Father, before you go, it feels like this is connected to our myth-busting conversation in that what was socially encouraged decades ago, generations ago, is now no longer the case. And so it's kind of necessary for a man to have a deep personal conviction, probably driven by a deep personal encounter with the Lord. Otherwise, why would they? It's so countercultural right now. And it's also probably right to be expected as the practice of the faith decreases, per capita, you would expect that family and friends would, if not open resistance, would maybe look at you a little sideways and not quite sure.
They mean well. They love and want the good for the young person.
Yeah.
And they have certain standards for what that should look like. And maybe they don't have that kind of holy imagination that says like, I know the Lord can take care of you, which is what anybody who enters into a vocation or takes a leap of faith is saying like, I know the Lord can take care of me, even though this asks something of me. I think every person who gets married on some level has to be willing to say like, I know, Lord, you'll take care of me even when my spouse cannot do so. As well as I would like, or even when I'm not able to take care of what is asked of me as well as maybe I would hope, or like you're going to be there and you promise really good things. And I think that's where as somebody who's maybe saying like, okay, like I'm a DRE or I'm a youth minister, I'm somebody who's working with these young people, to say that when that young person begins to ask questions, when he begins to show curiosity about like the life of the priest, or when he begins to like, when you see that he's had that decision, he's had that conversion, I think that's especially a good moment to be attentive and to be supportive and to kind of lend that sort of free, but still an invitation to say, hey, like, the Lord could choose to do some really cool things with you. And I just want you to know, if you have any questions about that, we're here for you and I'll support you in whatever the Lord asks. We love you and we just want you to do what the Lord wants. We want you to hear the Lord's voice and we want to support you in that. And if there's anything that you need from us as your small group leader or as your DRE, like I know you've had this really powerful experience. It's sometimes been hard to know what to do with that with other people, whether it's evangelizing others or whether it's discerning your own call. This is where that mentorship and leadership becomes so vital. These are the moments where getting that young person connected with the priest a little bit more intentionally can be a really powerful thing. To say you get a young person who comes off of a retreat or something like that, or maybe they've come from something that is really changing them, and out of that, okay, like this is when maybe a dinner with Father and some other young people and the youth minister could be really cool.
Yeah. Well, the unspoken assumption in this is that as a parent or a teacher or a coach, youth minister, whatever, like just a caring adult in the life of this person, you've experienced encounter yourself. You know the disorientation that can bring. Somebody's like, oh my gosh, I've had this kind of conversion moment. Whenever Jesus says, come follow me, there's always some sort of mission that goes with it, right?
Oh,
And
yeah.
I will make you fishers of men.
That's right.
Figuring out what that is for you. So it's this, you have to kind of know what encounter and conversion are like and have just a little bit of like, okay, so now might be a confusing time. Now would be a good time to enter into conversation. And not everybody's going to understand, what you've experienced. Here's how you can talk about that. And here's how you can nurture that.
Yes.
And you have to have had, at least at some level, that experience as an adult. Otherwise, it's very hard to accompany someone through that process.
Yeah, but so vital. I think that the reality is that we all know this, like God doesn't take anything away unless he is offering something much, much greater.
Yeah.
So, the whole thing, like I will give you 100-fold, but that's if you give up houses and brothers and sisters and mom and lands. Like if you're willing to give up all of those things, like the promise is that he will exceed us in generosity in every way.
Yeah.
There are the lies, the what could God take away box that any person who considers a vocation is probably going to encounter. Those are lies.
Yeah.
And
but it's hard to dispel those lies if it's not somewhat testimonial. I mean, the problem with young people these days is they can tell when you're lying. You can't fake it.
Yeah.
And so we have to be able to say, no, in my own life, the Lord has provided 10, 50, 100 times what I gave up.
Yeah. Sometimes people say, like, what can I do for vocations? And as much as you want to say, well, I wish that if you just did these, 10 tasks that we'd get another seminarian. I can't guarantee that.
Yeah.
Sometimes the best advice is just like, go on a retreat for yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. Being less angry would be a good first step.
And how does that happen? Like, well, I mean, I don't know, everyone's circumstances and capacities for those things are different based upon how many kids are running around your house and so on and so forth. So I get it. But sometimes the best thing you can do is go to Cloisters for a week, Cloisters on the Platte for a week under Broomtree, or, something along those lines. In other words, just to say, like, if you want to help them to hear the Lord's voice, then sometimes really like where is that alive in your life, and how have you experienced it, and how have you, if you have that anger, like so many do, like how's that going to be healed? There's so much that comes along with that. Like, the vocations work is holiness work. In the end, we're helping young people to do what everyone wants to enjoy in heaven forever, which is just to be in line perfectly with what the Lord's desires for us are. First, to be just loved and healed and helped. Then secondly, to go forth in some concrete way.
Mm-hmm. Father, what comes next? If there's this kind of conversion moment, this moment of encounter, what's happening in their journey after that?
They're in usually this state of, they just really desire to know Jesus more and more. They want to know more about the Lord.
Which right there, that's not often the experience. So if you have encountered a young person who actually desires to know, that's a sign that something special has happened there.
Yeah. That, anytime that curiosity is there, that's a really good and fun sign. And one thing that I think is important to realize is that if you take a 16-year-old boy, and maybe he comes off of a Steubenville conference or a JC camp or something like that, and he's really positive. Or, maybe he goes online and he starts watching all these podcasts. And he's watching YouTube videos.
He's binging Bishop Barron.
That's right. Bishop Barron and Father Schmitz. And he's going to be likely to have a lot of questions. And sometimes questions about things that maybe aren't on your heart as dearly or as closely. One thing I think of that happens a lot with guys who consider seminary is that they just like liturgy comes up, and the desire to see the Lord loved well, like to see that lived out well. Lots of questions about what the symbols are, what his experience is. And for many of us, you just say like, why do you care so much about that? Like in the midst of all these other relationships and life issues and things, you got to understand, like a young man who's in that stage, like, well, if he's called to the priest, he's going to be spending a lot of time in liturgy.
Yeah, well, I mean, you would hope he would be interested.
And you want him to love doing that. You want him to show up for Sunday Mass and be like, I love what I'm doing, and this nurtures and feeds me. I care about this. And he's going to have to do that every week, 2 or 3 times, a Sunday?
So you want him to love.
You want him to care and to love it. So in other words, like those kind of questions that can easily become like, oh, stop worrying about that or whatever. Like I'd say, do what you can to approach them with the same excitement that young person has. Whether
Wow.
it's about other things or whether it's about liturgy, just recognizing it's the same thing as, say, if you get a young girl who's been dreaming about marriage and she's got details about her wedding and she's planning about them and she's asking about them. And, you just say it's kind of fun and it's appropriate because, well, that's like a big part of her life.
Right. You don't scold her about like,
it's fun.
quit stressing
Like,
about the
good for
dress.
her.
It's
Yeah.
just a dress.
And if you've got a young man who like might be called to spend his life in sacramental service to Christ and his people, maybe it's kind of cool that he's asking those questions. And if he's not in perfect balance in that, maybe it's because he's a 16-year-old kid.
Yeah.
And that's wonderful and good. And if he's called to the priesthood, there will be plenty of time for things to balance out and for him to see, say, the bigger picture that exists within ministry and life and commitment to God's people and so on and so forth. So I just say, like, they usually come out of a conversion experience or somebody who has had that powerful experience and they're living in it. They're usually in a phase where they really want to learn a lot. And that's part of their equipping. That's part of and so just to have fun with that. That's also an area where, boy, if you have young people who are in that place and you can get a question the priest night or something along those lines, that stuff is solid gold.
Yeah.
And they can ask all kinds of questions, both about Father's theological expertise or whatever, but also his human sort of reality. It builds relationship. It's just a tremendous kind of a vocational thing, I think.
Yeah, that is so helpful because I think, if I show some interest and respect for what you're excited, embrace that and receive that. Hey, this is a really good sign.
Yeah.
I love it. That's super helpful.
Yeah. One thing is just to receive them in their questions and to kind of feed that sort of desire for all that stuff. And then the extent to which we provide community for them. And match them up with other people, other young people who are striving to know the Lord well. And that's where, if you've got a young man in your parish or something, maybe having him help out with a Virtus Veritas camp, or in the summer, like finding ways to get them connected with other people who are loving the Lord and striving.
Yeah, can we talk about that? So let's say your family is a little domestic church. You've got a young man or young woman who's considering vocation. How do you help them find a community of peers? I mean, you mentioned the boys' camp, Camp Virtus Veritas, Toby Karinsky, great opportunity there for young men to both either to attend or to serve as a counselor. Where else?
I think for the young women, I think the Apostolic Oblates in Omaha are also a very good resource in that regard. They just tend to know a lot of people and run those camps and form young women. I think that any youth group situation is going to be your start. And then I think that's where calling your youth minister, and if you are a youth minister listening to this, then maybe that's where you call me. If you're kind of like, I've got this guy and I want to know, are there groups around that I could plug into? Maybe,
right?
Because there are some both in the Omaha area as well as in I know in the Norfolk area. I think in some other parts of the diocese, there are certain groups that have formed, and certainly we want to help connect you. If you feel like I have no idea where I would go, then give us a call. Yeah, like I want to help that young man, and part of what he needs is support from you and from other like prayerful adults and supportive adults. But he or she are going to really also need peer support. Like they're going to benefit from peer support, to be sure.
The Newman Center, Young Catholic Professionals, and then just a whole lot of organic groups that are just kind of springing up of young adults. And you can help people find that group to connect the young person in their life too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So what else? What else do we need to know as we're going to try and accompany and walk with someone who's kind of going through this journey?
Well, I think that one of the good things is that we try to receive young people as the Lord builds them up. And if we stay focused on what the next step is towards loving the triune God, we're usually in much better shape than we are in saying, how can I get you into the seminary?
Thank you.
Like we are not using people and we're not manipulating people. Like that is not what we're about. And so it's always to say, like, what does God in all of his generosity, offering to both myself as the mentor, but offering to this young person. What are they interested in? What do they desire? What do they desire when they're really close to the Lord, when the Lord's really on their heart and they're very free before the Lord?
Mm-hmm.
And so we don't have to force them into things that aren't sort of coming forward from them. We want them to be open, but we don't need them to feel like they have to be open in order to please us, shall we say.
Wow.
And I think that's a thing is we don't want to accost prayerful young people and just say, hey, I know what your vocation is. And I would guess that most listeners would totally agree with that and be on board with that. But that's been the experience of a lot of people who grow up faithful, is that maybe, gosh, it seems like, I like going to daily mass, but I'm tired of being told by all these people, like, they don't know my heart.
These sweet old ladies who have never met me once are, but
they don't know me. They don't know my heart. They don't know my struggles. Like, and young people do bring a variety of struggles, maybe in their family, or maybe in terms of maybe things like anxiety, or sometimes pornography and purity. Those things are more concerns than ever. And so it can be a little bit jarring to hear someone approach you and be too forward or too strong about that. What do we really hope for? Like, what would we have appreciated maybe if we were in their shoes?
So good rule of thumb would be you should know their name before you tell them their vocation.
Yeah. And what I say is, like, look, it is inspiring to see young people in church. I think it always has been. Maybe it is particularly more and more. And I think if we let people know, no matter where they're at, like, man, we're just so happy to see you here. Your presence matters and you're a blessing to us. So thank you. And we're praying for you. I think that's a great thing to say, or a great sentiment to have, or a great desire to have. Sometimes our students at Newman will ask, is there anything that you would like me to pray for you? Which is kind of a nice question sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is there anything I can pray for you? And, I think maybe if you're really, really kind of seeing something in somebody, but you don't know them very well, that might be a good step, would be to say, hey, I'm praying for you, and I love that you're here. Is there anything you'd like me to pray for you? We could get, the rosary ladies on this.
That's awesome.
The old ladies on this. Like,
I
the
love
old, I say that in quotation marks, but just like prayerful people, like, it's very possible that they'll tell you then, like, well, actually, yes, my vocation, I'm really discerning and I would love for you to pray for me. And that would be a really good open door to say, oh, I love how you pray. And just know, like, we'll be supportive of you. Like, we'll be proud of you, whatever the Lord calls you to. And we'll just pray that the Lord's voice make that clear.
Yeah.
I had a time when I was in college where a woman approached me. I had never met her before, but she didn't tell me that I needed to become a priest. She said, you're discerning, aren't you? You're considering. Like, I don't know. She must have had some kind of insight or some kind of gift. And I said, yeah, I am. She's like, just know that basically it's okay. The Lord's taking care of you. It'll be fine. Which was for me just a beautiful gift that really set me free. In a certain, not permanently, but that was what I needed to hear at that moment. Like, just know the Lord's taking care of it and he's got you and it'll be fine. Thanks. I never saw her again. I have no idea, but I remember it vividly. And she might have, it was what I needed to hear. I didn't need to hear you need to become a priest, because I don't think I ever received that with gratitude or love. But I think when a young person, does say, like, hey, I'm thinking about this, for us to respond and say, gosh, that's great. And if you are the DRE, if you are, the youth minister, to say, like, okay, great. Let's talk about what your desires are for that and what that looks like for you. And just tell me about yourself in that. And it's good. So good.
This is great. Father, you're demystifying here some of, it's just like, so step one, be a Christian, pray, be polite, get to know people. I'm wondering, I really appreciated, I want to leave our listeners with some real practical takeaways here. I really appreciated how you distinguish beyond just an encounter with Jesus and a conversion, a community, a desire for prayer, that often in young men, there's this particular draw to the liturgy that might be an extra indicator that they're not just a Christian, but they may have a particular call to the priesthood. Are there any other particular things that we should look for, listen for, be aware of, do's and don'ts, and just some practical takeaways here for people?
Yeah, the young men, They're not always drawn to the liturgy as a special sign. It's not uncommon, but they do tend to love the Eucharist. That is a similar thing, whether that manifests itself liturgically or in adoration or something along those lines. There's a beautiful gift that comes from our own communion with the Lord, and knowing that when we are kind of united and when we're in Him, there's a real fruitfulness and sometimes the real openness. And I would say that the more that you are kind of in your place with the Lord and being faithful to what He's asking of you as you're being invited to help build up and heal the body of Christ and everything else, that trust that that's exactly where you need to be, that you're in a great place, you're in a perfect place. And then just to have that attentiveness is so helpful. So pray for young people, pray for them. It's not easy. It's not easy in any generation, and it's not easy for this generation. Pray for their parents, so many of whom we serve and we love. And then as we offer them, their parents and their children, opportunities to encounter Jesus, just know that every time that happens, there's an openness and a desire that will follow and flow from that.
Yeah.
And you might not have big numbers right now, but you can trust that as those opportunities are offered and as you're inviting people into that relationship, that He's going to bring about a desire to know more. And the more that you can say, well, as that takes place in other young people that I love, I have a sense of what that might look like, how I want to speak to them, how I want to encourage them and support them and love them. If I'm in a position within the parish, maybe to say well, do I know when to ask Father, or when to make sure I get some excuse for this kid to have an interaction with Father?
Yeah.
Are there ways that I can help build up that relationship, which is really important in so many priestly vocations? Relationship with priests is really helpful in so many different vocations. And so how do we help make sure that, we're doing that and getting Father kind of plugged in, getting the man plugged in, doing those things. So those are the things that I guess I'd say just to take away. The practical things here are pretty simple. The Lord tells us to pray for vocations. And I think so often we say, okay, we do that. But no, really, do that.
Yeah.
Do that.
Yeah. I'd like to
do that.
I'd like to challenge our listeners. Make it personal. And that's my takeaway for you. Don't get distracted whether or not this young person has had an encounter with the Lord, whether or not they have inklings of a call, whether they're actively discerning. Pray specifically right now. Don't close your eyes if you're driving, but pray for a young person, because if it is not their vocation, it might be just their fundamental conversion to the Lord. And if it's not their call, it may be their support of their friend. So pray for a young person that you know. And if you don't know of any young people, pray for my children. But pray for
our Newman kids.
Yeah, pray very specifically for some young people.
That's and I just think about that. My own dad would say he thought about the priesthood a little bit. He was really inspired by his parish priest, and but said, no, that's not really what I'm moved to or what I'm called to. And he has 2 sons who are priests.
Yeah.
And so you just don't know in the big picture of things how things all actually play out.
Yeah, that's awesome. Father, where do people go if they want to connect with you, if they want to learn more about helping someone pursue a vocation?
The first step often is to go to either your priest, or maybe if you've met a priest at, say, a youth event or something who you trust, and to make contact, email, whatever, phone, and to make contact and say, I want to talk about this. And you should want to talk about it. The Lord, this is the Lord. He's so good. God is good. If He has a plan for you, it is so good. He doesn't promise it'll be easy, but it's glorious. And so you should really hunger for that. So that's the first step. Certainly you can visit archomaha.org and take a look at vocations, or you can watch Father Mike Schmitz. He's awesome. Or Bishop Barron. There are a lot of good resources, podcasts like Poco a Poco or whatever. There are tons of different sources to feed the heart and to keep you encouraged and to keep you strong. But when it comes to contacting people, I'd say find somebody you trust, and then we'll help you. We'll walk with you. And if you want to be in touch with me, certainly head through the website or whatever, and feel free to be in contact with me. I'd be happy to talk to you.
Yeah, where do people find you?
at archomaha.org. And then you go to vocations. Certainly my email address, ajroza, ROZA, at archomaha.org. Free to email at any time. So those are the spots where you can easily be found. I'm in residence at JP2 Newman as well in Omaha. So
just
if you want to Google JP2 Newman, but you want to look up Archdiocese of Omaha Vocations, you'll also find contact information for us. So yeah, stop by or check out the website or whatever. I'm always welcome at Mass to join us if you'd like and to say hello. So there are all kinds of different opportunities. I, as Vocations Director, tried to make my way to different things around the diocese too. So if I stop out your way then and you feel comfortable, feel free to say hello.
That's awesome. Thank you for being with us, Father. Everybody, if you're listening, if this has been helpful for you, encouraging, pass this along to a friend. We like to say that, young people don't just need one or two adults, they need a whole community. And so if you know people who are in the lives of young people, and this has been a blessing to you, pass this along to them. Go ahead and share it. Thank you for being with us, Father. Appreciate it.
Great to be here. Yeah, thanks, Jim.
All right, thanks for being with us, everybody.